Yeah, it really varied. But I had numerous times when I would be in someone's apartment, and should a sensitive subject come up, they would go over and turn up the radio really loud. And that is an absolute truth. So I mean, I think you see that in shows like The Americans or I don't know, something, right? Where they do that. But that is what people did in case their comunalcas, their apartments were bugged. And often if they wanted to talk about something, sort of sensitive, if they had specific questions about what is it like? What is the political system like? We would go outside and walk around Gorky Park and talk, where, you could really be alone out in public and no one could hear you. And other times not. Other times they just wanted to feed you a Russian meal and wanted to, sing songs and just visit and we never knew who was with the government. We never knew who was KGB and who wasn't. We were always ourselves careful. We did not talk about, we did not ask prying questions about their lives or things. But there were a few cases when people came right out and said things. And to this day, I don't know if they were, what their position was, what they were trying to do.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter of the Author Podcast. We get to meet great people. And it's interesting when people come on my show and they've had a very interesting backstory and career, and they've done some very interesting things. They move over to writing and being an author. And I get a chance to meet them, talk about their book, but also get a little behind the scenes of some parts of the world that I would never have vision to. So that's exactly what's going to happen today. Suzanne's here on the show today, and we're talking about her book. She has more than one for you, and she's got some great stories to share and a great background that I really want to touch base on as well. Suzanne, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Glad to have you on the show.
Thanks so much, Dave. It's really terrific to be here.
Excellent. Let everybody know, first of all, where you are, Suzanne, this big world of ours.
I'm in Portland, Oregon at the moment, which is home, but I actually live part-time in Washington, D.C. because I have family there, children and grandchildren. So I go back and forth between the two coasts.
Very good. So something big is happening for you tonight, which is exciting. People are going to hear this after the fact, but they might go, wait a minute, I think that was the author that I saw in the moment. Tell everybody what's happening tonight that you're really excited about. Come on.
Yeah, so I'll be at Powell's World of Books, so the City of Books, the biggest independent bookstore actually in the world. That's in Portland, Oregon, downtown Portland, at 7:00 tonight, talking about The Communist Secret, my second book, but also talking a little bit about Russia under Putin, which is a favorite topic of mine. So, yeah, I'll be doing that and looking forward to it.
There you go. Will there be security when you're talking about topics like this? Wow.
Yeah, my kids just say, Mom, stop talking about that stuff. And I can't help myself. I mean, I'm a nobody as far as Putin is concerned. So,
yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so that leads into like the obvious question. You have a background. You have been doing stuff in the past. Working in some pretty amazing locations, working with some pretty amazing people. Can you share a little bit about your career background, which kind of leads into the topic of our conversation today? Give us some background on what
Yeah, it sure does, because if not for that career and actually my academic background, I wouldn't have chosen to write about the former Soviet Union in the 20th century. So it's kind of a funny story. I went to Purdue University, thinking I wanted to be an aerospace engineer because I wanted to be an astronaut, and Neil Armstrong had gone to Purdue, and I got there and hated every single class I was in. The first few weeks, and after 6 weeks I dropped out of engineering and started studying political science and Russian language. Bless my parents, they said, okay, honey, if that's what you want to do, but it was a dramatic change. I had been raised during the Cold War, right? 60s and 70s. And to me, the risk of nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union was one of the biggest threats to mankind. And so I thought, in my incredible optimism, well, maybe there's something I can do in that field. Maybe there's, something I can, do to help reduce that risk a little bit or make the world a little bit better. And so I went from there. While I was an undergrad, my last semester, I went to study in Moscow. Ohio State University had a program and invited students from all kinds of programs to come and study in Moscow for a semester. And that was a really that was probably the most profound turning point for me. It was a wonderful experience, first of all, to be able to speak with Soviet citizens on the street and be invited to their homes. And have them confide in you and ask you all kinds of questions about America and life and things that their government did not allow them to read or study or learn about, And the lack of individual freedom there was, I knew that. I had been studying the subject, but it's different when you're there. Yeah. And there are people who they're just, I'll never be able to go to America. They say. And of course, things changed dramatically sometime later, but that really made me want to be in the field I was in. And I was already headed to graduate school to study international relations. And I then, after that, I got a job at the Pentagon and in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, which is the policy part of the Pentagon. The Pentagon is all the military branches. It's huge. It's like, at least when I worked there, it was like 25,000 people in this one office building. It's crazy. Massive place. But the Office of the Secretary of Defense is a lot more civilians than military folks. And a relatively small part of the building. And I was in an office called European Security Negotiations and absolutely thrilled to be in that office. But I have to say we were the poor cousins in the arms control business. There was several offices, down the hall that were the sexy talks, the nuclear talks and the non-proliferation talks. And here we were doing something kind of really obscure. And what we were doing was, considering confidence building measures to give to lower the possibility of some kind of conflict in Europe. By what we did is we negotiated these things that you would give advance warning. Say if you were West Germany and you were sending 50,000 troops out in the field to do some kind of maneuver, or the other side would think, what the heck, right? That's a lot of troops out there, and all the alarm bells would start to go off. So we negotiated something where you would give advance warning. And it turned out to be, it was a very big deal for European countries. There were 35 countries involved in the negotiation. So all the Warsaw Pact, all the NATO, and most of the neutral and non-aligned countries. And for them, it was really important. For the U.S., it was not so important. I don't want you to think I was, negotiating, the reductions of nuclear weapons or something like that. That was not it. But it fell at a very important time in history. This was 84 to 86. So Mikhail Gorbachev is brand new, and he begins talking of glasnost, of openness. And that's exactly what we were negotiating. Nice. So it just was, when all was said and done, it was just one little step to help that process that ultimately, resulted in the collapse of the Soviet Union, and before that, the taking down the Berlin Wall. Right. So it had its little value. It did have, and it was really terrific. A terrific job. I had a wonderful time doing it and loved every minute of it. Yeah.
Anything that you don't see on a public tour of the Pentagon? Is that even a thing? Can you have a public tour of the Pentagon? Wait, I don't even know. I don't even know. I haven't been back in decades, so I do not know, especially after 9/11, if any. I would be surprised if that was allowed, but I really don't know. Actually, what you see are these just massive hallways of offices. Yeah. That's what it is. It's in the shape, five-sided Pentagon, right? And you have concentric rings. So, you're off, like my office number, if I can remember, it was 1C
377. So that meant it was on the first floor in the C ring,
Okay. Okay.
It was so the funny thing was the Pentagon, it all looked the same. It was really easy to get
Yeah.
lost. But of course you learn very quickly where your office is.
And
So
maybe where you shouldn't be.
yeah. I think only once or twice did I end up in the hallway where the Secretary of Defense offices were. And that was an area I was very junior, so that was not a place I would need to go.
So is there like a McDonald's in there or like a food court? Like what do we?
Well, yes, there was a cafeteria food / court for that many people. I mean, it was very large, very large. There was also a huge an officers club, a gym. And the thing was you had to be an officer, right? And I was civilian, so I had to wait a period of time before I would get approved. And it was so great when I got that membership then and could work out there before work or at lunchtime or whatever. Yeah,
and that would be that'd be a building that's busy like all the time, not a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 type thing.
There were mornings I would be there at 6:30 in the morning, and there are people there, military folks tend to be fairly early birds anyway. So it was there were always lots of people. And I think in many offices, people got out of there, at 5 o'clock. But, if you're working on a policy issue and it's an important issue and there's something going on, you're on duty, Yeah. So.
Do you ever pinch yourself though when you first started there? Like, I can't believe I'm in this building right now. Like,
when I first started, it was really exciting. I was so thrilled to be at the Pentagon. I really was. And in fact, until I left, I was. But I didn't really have the pinch me moment until I'd been there for a couple of years. So I was in this small office, as I said, European security negotiations, kind of toiling away in obscurity. No one up above paying too much attention. Maybe once every few months, you'd have to send a memo or give a short briefing to an undersecretary, but very little was going on. The U.S. was working to establish its policies going into this conference. And I was mostly working with people from other U.S. agencies, from the Arms Control Disarmament Agency, from the State Department, the White House, etc. But what happened is that when the negotiation opened, the way the U.S. mission there in Stockholm, which is where the conference was structured, was you of course have an ambassador at the top, and he was a State Department, had been a diplomat his whole life, a fabulous guy named Robert Barry. And so he was the head of the mission. And then there was another ambassador from the Arms Control Disarmament Agency. And then the third ranking person was the representative of the Secretary of Defense. And in the case of this conference, that the person appointed to that job was a political appointee. So he had no background in the details at all. He had just donated a lot of money to Ronald Reagan's campaign. And this it isn't unusual now. It wasn't unusual then. This is how business is done, right? But he left that job about halfway through, and the powers that be turned to, of course, our office. It was our job. It was our technical stuff. We knew everything, and they said to my boss, "Well, I guess you're going to Stockholm." And he was a Army colonel who had done a couple tours in Vietnam, a really great guy who had spent a lot of time overseas, spoke better Russian than I did, everything pointed he should go. But he came into my office the very next day and said, Suzanne, I just don't want to do this job. And you actually know the details better than I do, so you're going to go. And so I was 28 years old and representing the Secretary of Defense on a U.S. delegation. Wow. That was the pinch me moment,
Wow.
Flying over there, the very first time I sat at the table, 35, people all representing different nations, and the plaque in front of me, says United States of America.
Wow.
And there's nothing like that moment, So was and it was the negotiation was very successful in the end, and that was also just fabulous.
Do you get to keep the plaque? Like stick it in your bag and like, I'm taking this with me. No.
I did not, but I wish I had.
Yeah.
But what I did do is actually, I'm going to
You
show
got
you.
something to show me? Come on.
I didn't plan this, but this sits on a bookcase near me, and it is actually the page that I wrote most of this page in the document, in the final agreement. These signatures are all the people that I negotiated with.
Really?
And I had them after it was successful. I got a copy of the document and pulled the page out and went around and got them all to sign it.
Nice.
And then my kids laugh and say, "But Mom, your signature's not on there." And that's the funny part. I didn't sign it. I just was in such a excitement, and then I had it laminated.
Yeah.
So,
There you go.
but I know that I belong on that piece of paper. So
That's
just kind of a fun.
There you go. I like that. So again, I haven't had anybody on my show with your background and your stories and your perspective. So this is quite interesting for me. As a Canadian listening to all this, I have no idea how this all works. And I love how you've unpacked this for us already. I'm having a podcast is like the coolest thing. I get to meet some of the most amazing people. You might not feel like it's like, it's like, yeah, it's my job. But for me, listening to this, I'm just like, that's amazing. Just sitting at that table. I think I would be overwhelmed as well. I'd be like, I can't believe it's me. I'm representing this. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was when I really started having to do public speaking, but it was still. I mean, I would probably say the first time I spoke at length at that conference was the scariest moment of my life. I think it's hard for me to recall another moment, and everything went fine. And then there were times I had to speak extemporaneously a lot. And, when you're at an international conference and you and the Soviets are the biggest players at the table. So everyone looks to you to, what is the U.S. going to say and this kind of thing. And there were a few moments where, there was one moment in particular late in the conference, and the session opened, and the representative from the Warsaw Pact had already raised his hand and was lambasting the United States because we had attacked Libya, terrorist forces in Libya, and I hadn't been warned about this, and so walked into the conference cold, not knowing what had happened, and was trying to get confirmation. My British counterpart was a deputy chief of mission, that's very much more senior than I, a great guy who really supported me, and we worked great together. And then a German army officer on my left, and I'm trying sort of to get confirmation, and I did actually. And so then I knew how I had to respond, and what I did was I just put him in his place and said, it's the height of hypocrisy for the representative of the Soviet Union, or whatever I said, to, accuse the U.S. of violating international laws when you have attacked and occupied the country of Afghanistan since 1979 or whenever it was. And the room was so quiet, and afterwards it erupted, and all the Western representatives from Western countries came over to me and said, "Thank you so much," because in a negotiation, it's all supposed to be very subtle what you do and say. You don't embarrass people, and yet he had embarrassed me, and so I was going to do the same. And it was a little bit of a risky thing, but all I got, even my ambassador came to me later on that day after he heard what happened and congratulated me and said that was the right thing to do. And that's when actually my NATO colleagues gave me the nickname the Iron Maiden of Stockholm, which is such a bizarre thing. But if you lived in that era in the 1980s, you knew that Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, was called, right? Yeah. The Iron Woman. So Iron Lady. Right?
There you go.
And so they called me the Iron Maiden of Stockholm, and it was just because she was known to be super tough regarding the Soviets, and I had done the same thing. So it was a frighteningly appropriate comment and title, but it was also embarrassing a little bit. They would call me that on and off, in meetings and things, not in a session, but it was also confirmation that they thought very well of me, and that was really nice. I was 28 years old.
28.
28, the only woman, just about. There was a woman from Belgium, a long, like 30-year career diplomat, but very few women. Almost all white males, Army officers, military officers, diplomats, whatever. And so this was the beginning of the time when women could, take on, when it wasn't unheard of for women to take on tremendous roles and things. So I never felt it was odd, but it was. And really my age had a lot to do with that too, I'm sure, because I was. So.
Wow. Okay.
Anyway.
So you end off your time at the Pentagon and you move forward with your life. You live your next chapter. It's the name of my show. I got to kind of slide that in there. Yeah. You move into your next chapter. Where do you go from there? And I want to kind of tie it into your writing then as an author, but what kind of facilitated the move from that to something new? How did you take the next step?
I wanted to stay home and raise my children. It was that simple. Nice. It was very simple. I had a child and in 1987, and I went back to work and I hated my life. I am not a person who, despite all the things on my plate, I want to do things well. That is a big part of my personality. And I didn't have the room to do both my job well and being the mother I wanted to be. So it was a shocking change for my family, my former husband, my parents even. But I think it was funny. My mother said to me, she said, in your 6 years with the Pentagon, you've done more than most people get to do in a lifetime. So she understood the change, the switch. Anyway, I stayed home for quite some time. I have 4 adult children, and we began to move because my former husband worked for Intel. So we went overseas, and that was fantastic and a great education for my kids, even though they were young. We went to Singapore for 4 years and Germany for 4 years, and both of those were really fantastic experiences. And I'm really grateful I got to do that for my kids because, I was raised, in a farmhouse in New York State, and the first time I went overseas was to Moscow.
Really?
Yes, as a senior in college. Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time in Canada. I think my family is Canadian. My mother's was from Montreal, and I spent all my summers up in Saint Donat de Montcalm in Quebec.
There you go.
Just telling you, I have reasons to love Canada. Yeah. All Americans love Canada now, but
yeah.
But I loved Canada before all this started. Anyway, so I did have the opportunity to teach university part-time while I was in Singapore, and that was really fun. I had often thought I wanted to be an academic. And had been toying with the idea of, do I go get a PhD? And so I can pursue that as a career because I'm not going to go back and work for the government. And I did not do that, but I did enjoy teaching very much. And then I moved back to the U.S. with my 4 kids, and they were from 4 to 13, 5 to 13 years of age. I was, a single parent, and it was a large family, and I was grateful that we had sufficient resources that I didn't have to work. Yeah. I thought I would teach, and I went to the local community college, and the pay for a single course was $1,300 for a semester, and it was just so little money for all the time and energy I knew it would take. Yeah. So I did not pursue that, and that's when I started coaching. I had been a very serious runner and decided I could coach, and I did, and had a fabulous time coaching high school cross country and track. Nice. Until I felt it was time to do something else. I was in my late 50s, had thought maybe there's another act for me, and that's when I decided I wanted to start writing. Okay, so that's how I got,
there you go. Got here. There's a full circle. I like that. Okay, well done, by the way.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Sorry.
following along the whole time. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
the book is coming. I
Yeah.
know the book is coming, and here it is. So you have more than one book as well, which is exciting. Can you tell the readers that are here kind of who you're writing to, who your ideal audience is, and kind of like an overview of where you're going as an author? We'll kind of get into more about the books themselves, but if you do have like an ideal reader, an ideal audience for your books.
Well, my books are historical fiction. So that is the the immediate audience, right? Is if you like historical novels, this I think would be something you would enjoy. It is World War II also, which has its own particular market, I would say. Some say a very oversaturated market, but in any case, there's not a lot of World War II historical fiction written about, the former Soviet Union. There just isn't. And I think I'm very lucky because my experience allows me to write with some authenticity, that and the fact that I'm a bit of a nerd and I love to do the research, and spend a lot of time, trying to get my facts straight. But so I decided I wanted to write about World War II, and I knew immediately what I wanted to write, which was about the siege of Leningrad when the Germans blockaded the city of Leningrad. That's modern-day St. Petersburg, and starved 1 million civilians to death over the course of 2.5 years. And it's this tremendous, tragedy in war history that's just very little known, especially in the U.S., and very little talked about. And yet, so I just decided that was what I was going to write. And there have been a few books written about the siege, but I wanted to write really a broad a book that would encompass all the main events of the siege. And to do that, I had to have a cast of characters. So Lost Souls of Leningrad it got really four important characters and other secondary characters. And the main characters are a grandmother and granddaughter who are trapped in the city during the blockade. And it is their struggle for survival and their struggle to maintain their humanity that is the real focus of the book. And then as I was writing that book, I realized there were other stories that I wanted to tell. And so The Communist Secret is the story of the woman in between those two women. So it is Yelena as a teenager, and it's her mother, Sophia, the grandmother. It's her daughter-in-law. And so Katya has, as the book opens, she's committed, really broken the most important rule in Soviet society, I would say. She has, which is never say anything that can be used against you. And it's still an important rule, actually, in Russia, but unfortunately. And there are terrible consequences. Her husband is imprisoned and sent to the Gulag, and she herself loses her party card and her job, and then things go from bad to worse, and all hell breaks loose because the Nazis attack the Soviet Union, and war comes to Russia. So Katya just volunteers for with a group that is going to build tank trenches to try to slow down the onrushing Germans. And she's out in the field quite some distance from the city, like 150 kilometers or something. And but after just a few weeks, the German war machine kind of sweeps through, and they slaughter and scatter all the volunteers. And then Katya and another young woman are on the run. And the book is their story of their journey through war and how Katya learns to fight the Germans, although under occupation, and also how she comes to terms with her own failings. She's carrying a lot of demons, and also the failings of her government, which she begins to see with more clarity. So it's a character. It's a journey of a character through war.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's that book.
Wow.
Yeah.
You mentioned losing your party card. Is that what you said? What does that mean? Excuse my ignorance. I'm not really sure how that means.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, she was a Communist Party member, a loyalist, very devoted. Now, in the Soviet Union, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was not like most people were members of the party.
Okay.
It was, a smaller group. Maybe it was 10 or 15%. I really shouldn't even say because someone's going to get back to you and say, no,
wait.
sorry, it's one of those numbers I don't have on the tip of my tongue. But she was a devoted party member, raised by parents who were workers and didn't have a lot of paths in life, and so they joined the party during the revolution, and so she was very devoted. But the party kind of betrayed her when she spoke out of turn, and but she still is loyal, and she still wants to try to get back in the party's good graces and get a good job again, and that's as the war is beginning, and then she slowly sees the ways in which Stalin and the government actually have betrayed the people, and for example, those volunteers that are 150 miles south of Leningrad near a small town, there are almost 10,000 of them, and there's no warning at all. The Germans arrive and people are slaughtered, thousands and thousands of them. So it's to have no warning. And Stalin, of course, was very cut off from the early weeks of the war because he didn't believe war was coming, didn't want to believe it. And so anyway, she comes to see some of the failings of the government and of herself, and she desperately wants forgiveness, really, from her family, from her husband especially, and so it's a redemption story too.
Well, part of my wife's family's history is in Holland during World War II. My father-in-law was a child during World War II, and the Germans coming through Holland. He remembers hiding U.S. pilots shot down in his farmer's field for the farm that he grew up on, hiding under his bed as a child, and the Germans banging on the front door to get in to capture these pilots. There's no pilots here, they would say. But he remembers all of these stories and the impact, firsthand knowledge of what had happened. His dad captured by the Germans, escaped from German custody, stole a bicycle from the Germans and took off. like stories like that. And like, what? Yeah. Like, you forget.
The bravery, right? The bravery of average, we would say average citizens. I think human beings are so, it's complicated, but amazing too, that, when faced with some kind of, horror, to take in enemy pilots, well, you would just be shot for doing that, just like people who took in, Jewish families or neighbors or whatever to hide them, right? It's, and I think I wanted to capture a little bit of that, of ordinary citizens who would stand up and like the Netherlands, right? This part of Russia was occupied. And so the rules are a little different in occupied territories and things, but they are harsh nonetheless. They were harsh nonetheless, So that's amazing about your father-in-law. Yeah. Just astounding.
Right.
Wow. Has someone written his story?
We have a family documented story. Family members combined all the different stories from all the family members and created a book for the family. It was published to the community, like out to the world, but it's made for us. And it's got news clippings and, it's something just made for each of the family members, which is quite unique, very special terrific for us to have, right?
Yeah, that's really, really terrific.
Right. When you went to Russia the first time and you had time with citizens, how open in that environment are they to speak with you? Is like you talked about, never get caught by saying what you said, and that kind of belief in Russia. Like, were people really open with you as an American citizen on their territory? Were they a little caged, a little cautious, talking around you, but still wanting to tell their story?
Yeah, it really varied. But I had numerous times when I would be in someone's apartment, and should a sensitive subject come up, they would go over and turn up the radio really loud. And that is an absolute truth. So I mean, I think you see that in shows like The Americans or I don't know, something, right? When they do that. But that is what people did in case their comunalcas, their apartments were bugged. And often if they wanted to talk about something, sort of sensitive, if they had specific questions about what is it like? What is the political system like? We would go outside and walk around Gorky Park and talk where, you could really be alone out in public and no one could hear you. And other times not. Other times they just wanted to feed you a Russian meal and wanted to, sing songs and just visit and we never knew who was with the government. We never knew who was KGB and who wasn't. We were always ourselves careful, we did not talk about, we did not ask prying questions about their lives or things. But there were a few cases when people came right out and said things. And to this day, I don't know if they were, what their position was, what they were trying to do.
Yeah. Because you would have to be careful on what you do, where you go. And did you at that time, being that age, did you have any sense of kind of the global? Because then you come back in a totally different form later on. Yeah. But at that age, did you have any concept of what this kind of meant in the moment to be talking to these people and have this audience?
I think not. I think at that point in time, I was not very looking far into the future. And I had no sense or idea that, it was, so Brezhnev died and then they had, Andropov, and he died after a year and something, and then Chernenko, and he died after a year. So they went through a series of leaders from the, I forget when Brezhnev died, from I want to say late 70s through the early 80s, until they got to Gorbachev. And I think that was a big kind of, that was just starting. Brezhnev was still alive when I was a student there in 1979. So I don't know what year he died, if it was 80 or 81, I don't remember. But I wasn't really that forward looking, but I was careful because when we were briefed extensively before we went by the heads of the program, not by, the CIA or anything like that, who just said, listen, you need to be very careful what you say. You cannot ask pointed questions. We were told, and it was only when, an individual wanted to confess something, tell something, or ask something about life in the U.S. that wasn't necessarily controversial, but still might get them in trouble, that we would do that outside and that kind of thing. I at the time, we knew there were, the KGB were following us, but I rarely saw evidence of that until... This is so ironic, such an ironic thing. One day, a young man, a man older than me, I was 21, and he would have been maybe in his late 20s, drop dead, gorgeous man, knocks on my hotel room. And right away, there were a few alarm bells that went off because in a hotel, this was a hotel for foreign students. No Russians are allowed in this hotel, right? But he gave me a explanation that he was a student of English and he had gotten permission to do that. And I bought that. And he wanted to go out for coffee, and then he wanted to go out for dinner. And the third time he asked me out, I guess I knew something was not quite right. And I said, I don't think so. Thanks very much. And it was fine. And that was the end of it. And then how many years later? 3 years later, I'm out of graduate school and applying for work. And the two places I applied were the CIA and the Pentagon. And at the CIA, I failed the polygraph twice. Because and they said to me, listen, there's something going on here with this question. Have you ever been approached by an agent of a foreign government? And I kept saying, no, I haven't been. And the thing of it was, in my subconscious, I knew he had been an agent of a foreign government. And it was a scary moment for me because I would never have been able to work for the U.S. if I hadn't gotten a security clearance, right? So they sent me home and said, you're going to come back. It was late in the week. They said, you're coming back on Monday and you're going to take this polygraph again. And you better be able to recall why you're reacting to this question, right? And I went home. The only time in my life I kept a diary was those months I was in Moscow. I pulled it out and I found it. I found the guy's name, and I had told them that I had dated someone. So at the CIA, they knew that. But I brought his name in. They took it. They took my diary. Disappeared for like 45 minutes. I'm sitting in this completely windowless basement room, something straight out of a spy novel, and they come back in with a file folder and put it on the desk and say, "Here's his KGB file." Now, with the exception of so-and-so, we're going to ask you a question again.
Getting goosebumps here.
Okay, so that's the last piece I'll tell you. I know you're so great to talk to, and I just keep talking.
No, I'm loving this. I'm like on every word. I am.
I'm going to make a switch after my third novel. I'm going to write a couple of Cold War spy thrillers, and loosely based on that incident will have something to do with I haven't figured out all the characters and all of that, but because that incident is just too good not to write about.
So they bring a file folder into the room,
and they say, "Hey, this is his KGB file. Now we're gonna give you the polygraph again." And when they got to the question that I kept failing, they said, with the exception of Dmitry, whatever his name was, have you ever been approached by an agent of a foreign government? And I said, no. And I passed. And that was that. And they offered me a job. But I turned down the job and went to work at the Department of Defense. So.
Whoa.
Yeah, good story, huh?
That is a great story. That's coming out in the future for sure. That's gonna
it will. It may take me a couple of years because writing it's one thing you get into the rhythm of writing a certain genre of a book, right? And I feel like I'm really in that rhythm with historical fiction, but I want to make that switch. And the Stockholm Talks, that's a great venue for a spy story. So I'm starting to think about
that one as well for women reading that, being the context you shared earlier about you being a young woman in that situation, and not a lot of people in the room like you from a woman's perspective, and you're there at the table, right? And come on, that's inspiring right there. That's a movie. That's a movie to me. I don't know.
Maybe
Come
so.
on.
Who knows?
Come on.
I mean, I don't have an agent yet. I'm not represented, although, so should I get an agent, maybe those kinds of things become possible. I don't know. We'll see.
I anticipate you and I are going to have many more conversations in the future because you're just going to keep writing and keep sharing stories. And that's exciting for me to have connection with you. I could talk to you for the rest of the day. This is outstanding. Let's wrap up then for the readers again. I want to send them to you so they have a location to come find you and follow your journey. Keep up to date and the books, right? We've got to grab them all. We're going to buy all the books. And leave you great reviews as well. That's what we will do for you as readers. But kind of a wrap up for the readers then, what your love letter is in all of this, as we've kind of talked through this today. Specific to the reader, if you could have time with them one-on-one, you're going to see them tonight at the event, at the bookstore. Great. But let's do that for the person listening now. Just your love letter to the reader. For your books, from an author to the reader, what do you want to say to the reader?
I think my biggest message is, I write these historical novels because they say something urgent about today. And that urgency is that democracy is a tremendous gift. And, we need to hold fast, not, yes, in the U.S., but, democracy has been weakened in lots of countries. And, individuals do not have the kind of freedoms, that we do in democratic nations. And so that's a big reason why I write what I do about dictatorships, to show how bad things can be and how lucky we are. So that's kind of my love letter to readers is, come and read and, be inspired, to love your democracy even more than you already do.
You've expanded our worldview just in the conversation today. And I would challenge anyone in your 20s, try to find your path in life, go and experience life, open your world up to other places, other cultures, other people, learn, and put yourself in the place of hearing these stories and meeting these people, because you never know where it's going to take you in life, right?
You do. You never know. And if any of your readers want to get in touch with me, go to my website, which is www.suzanneparrywrites.com, and email me. I will answer you, and you can learn a little bit more about what I do.
Excellent. Enjoy your event tonight. I hope you have many smiling, happy people there to meet you, to get their book signed and have time with you. I'm honored that I have the advance of having you here with me before you go to that event, that you're here with me on the show.
I know. This is so special talking with you today. Really, just so much fun for me. And I so appreciate you, Dave, for having me. Excellent.
Everyone, all the information, as always, for Suzanne and the books, her journey, and maybe some new books coming down the road. We never know. Suzanne's going to keep writing and keep coming back. So again, Suzanne, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Dave. I really appreciate it. Take care now.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. Glad to have you here. I just want to let you know that you can always find out what we're doing live in the moment by going to our YouTube channel. Head over to livingthenextchapter.com. There'll be a link right there. Head over to our YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things that all the YouTubers love to say. And in our YouTube channel, a couple things. You're going to get advanced listens. You're going to get the episodes that we're working on in real time. So we record and post daily on our YouTube channel. I'd love for you to give us a follow over there. As well, we're making playlists. We have over 500 episodes. So finding the right episode for you, we're trying to group things into playlists. So if you like children's books, if you like business, you like historical fiction, we're grouping our authors together to make it a little easier for you to find your favorite next author. So head over to livingthenextchapter.com. And again, I'd love to hear from you. Hearing from the listeners of the show is great. And I just want to say thank you for being a part of the podcast family. And I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time and your listen. Take care.